Hello, my name is Ben.
My name's Andrew.
And we are your hosts of the Too Vague podcast this week. One word, two hosts, stories, trivia, and video games.
True that.
Was the intonation... What? I'm sorry, what?
I said true that. I don't know. I just thought I should say something. I'm on this podcast too, yo. We're going to win a Peabody.
All you gotta do is just yo.
Yo.
Right.
That's totally me. I'm a yo guy.
Yo guy. The yo guy.
That's right. I drove through Philly once.
Yeah. Yo. How's the parenting going?
Oh, man. I'm a parent again.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had a new little bairn born to me household.
Yeah.
A few weeks ago. She's pretty great. She's pretty darn cute, which, that's a real bonus. Yeah. Sometimes they come out kind of, you get a little Ed Asner all of a sudden, but no, she looked pretty cute.
What are you saying about Ed Asner?
I'm saying some babies look like him. When they're born. Nothing against Ed Asner. Yeah.
If there was a name for that condition, what would it be?
I can't think of Asnerism.
Asnerism.
Sorry, ma'am, your baby has a mild case of Asnerism. Should clear up by the age of 3.
Yes, watch these episodes of, what's her name?
Mary Tyler Moore Show.
watch these episodes of Mary Tyler Moore Show to get you familiar with what you're in for. So you've been playing lots of parenting games, I guess.
Yeah, the parenting game. Yeah, it's a constant cycle of, 3-hour rotation of feeding, the diapering, the putting back to sleep. Then it happens again. And sometimes she's awake for a little bit.
When does that stop? When does it start being like a normal human schedule? Or does it?
They never become normal.
No.
They didn't put that in the manual. They didn't even...
My baby's first words was, I want to watch late night. What the heck is that? Yeah.
No, there's some stuff like the first step is getting them up to weight. So get the baby up to a good weight where the baby doesn't need to eat as constantly because, they're little and their stomachs don't hold a lot. And then they grow a little bit, their stomachs get bigger, and then they can hold enough, in one feeding to keep them going for a few hours. So
Right.
I think that usually by like 10 or 12 weeks, they get to a point where you can get them to sleep longer at nighttime if you're smart and diligent.
Well, I have been playing games.
Sweet. One
of which I will talk about in our second half in more detail. But still playing Dave the Diver.
Dave the Diver.
Yeah, it just seems like they keep on giving me more and more stuff to do. And I don't know if I like it.
Sounds kind of like a job, yeah.
Yeah, almost. Because now I've got seahorse races that I can be in. I've got a little Tamagotchi-like thing that I got to take care of before I get on the boat. I've got a farm. I've got a fish farm. And I've got an actual farm. And one of the characters who tends the farm for me, his son, recently, we served him some good sushi. And he said, I'm going to work with my dad. He's a rapper. This rapper kid who has a jersey. And on the jersey, it says balls.
Balls.
But it's supposed to be the Bulls. Yeah, it's like a basketball jersey. But
okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Balls.
The Chicago Balls.
The Chicago The most boring mascot ever.
Yeah.
There's an underwater sea people. I go there. I've got a seaweed farm now. It's just like a lot of stuff before I get into the fishing part of it. But it's still fun. I mean, making my way through the story, and it's one of those games that, you can put down and pick up again and capture all the underwater things. I did see some dinosaur fish.
Yeah.
Yeah, not the actual one that...
The coelacanth?
Yeah, not the one Larry...
Or the other one. Yeah, Larry gets the coelacanth tacos. Yeah.
Yeah. So...
Which, it's not really a dinosaur fish. It's...
Right, just an ancient fish, but...
An ancient fish with, like, the pseudopods. It's just, like, it hasn't evolved much since dinosaur times. So.
Right. I have gone underneath through the ice into an area where we've got all these different, very dinosaur-ish looking, very old looking, lots of plates and armor. I wonder if there's going to be time traveling in it. That's all I'm thinking now.
Yeah.
Fishing for space fish. I don't think it's going to go that far, though.
That's eerily close to the plot of my novel.
Space fish?
I'm going to sue them. Space fishing.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Actually, no, I'm throwing people off. Yeah. They'll be like, what? So if somebody does go way into space fishing to like scoop me, then that's a misdirect.
Is that what the premise is going to be about? Space fishing?
There is a giant shark, but it's in a weird multi-dimensional space that's like, it's 1 minute up from our normal timeline.
Uh-huh.
I feel like you think of time as a dimension,
right? And
usually it goes in a certain way, but if you go like kind of screw up in a different direction, on the fourth dimension instead of progressing the normal way, which maybe is like a horizontal direction, you could go like up.
Okay.
And so they go 1 minute up, and there's like there's a giant shark that flies around for no reason.
Okay.
Just have a giant shark.
Ah.
And spoiler alert.
This is in the Larryverse?
This is in the Larryverse. This is, I didn't get this from Stephen Hawking. I made this up myself.
Okay. Okay. All right. The giant shark in the Larryverse.
Yeah, people need to like start hitting me up on my Patreon, and maybe I'll organize it so that the chapters are easy to find. But yeah, I got a Patreon.
You do. It's in the show notes every week that you're on.
Oh yeah. Oh, you do. Well, cool. That's nice. Yeah. So if people want to like find out like what's up
in the Larryverse, are you almost done with the second?
I'm so close. There's this pivotal scene that I got to figure out, and I'm figuring it out more and more. It's just like I was writing a chapter a couple weeks ago, and then I was like, oh, cool, this thing happens, and it ties into that thing, and then I'm like, all right. Then I got to like figure out all the other threads it connects to, and that's the thing. Like you get far enough into a thing, you've laid down all these breadcrumbs and all these threads for this intricate story, and then you go like, holy crap, this is where they connect up. So that's a fun part of the puzzle, but it's also, I've had a baby and the sleep deprivation and
right.
But I think I'm going to try to work on it a little bit more this week.
Cool.
Or next week. It's I don't know.
Simon.
That's if the time change doesn't mess me up.
Yeah.
Daylight savings is happening. Like
yeah.
I'm like, how's that going to mess with my sleep deprivation?
Yeah, I just have to be concerned with the offset here in Arizona because we don't observe. So it's just kind of like,
yeah,
time changes everywhere else and it doesn't change for us. So it's just as annoying, I think.
It's annoying, but in its own way. It's funny, because like I grew up in Arizona, but my dad worked for the railroad. So because the time zones were created by the railroads, he was beholden to daylight savings time while the rest of us were on the regular time. So like twice a year, he'd change when he got up in the morning and be like, what? It was great.
My dad's a time traveler.
Oh, there you go. It's the dumbest form of time traveler. Daylight savings.
That sounds like a chapter of your book. The dumbest form of time travel.
That does sound like a chapter of my book. And maybe I have to write that tomorrow. Yeah.
One quick thing. Do you ever write chapters out of order? Like you'll write one chapter, finish it, and then you'll kind of go back to one that's in the middle of the book? Or do you just do it sequentially?
That's a really good question. Well, I go sequentially, but it's a time travel book. And sometimes I'll be like, hey, let's go back to this other scene that happened and see it from a slightly different thing. And then I do switch between different narrators. So one narrator is, got this certain perspective, and then another narrator has a different one. And then sometimes we do a flashback.
Right.
And I bet when I go through and like say, okay, I've got all the chapters for this book, and then I go through and then I have to read it over again and do an editing process and rewriting.
Yeah.
And so basically I'm still working on the first draft. But then when I go back to that, it's very possible that I would be like, hey, chapter 17 feels more like a chapter 23. And, I can move them around like that.
So you do it sequentially, but then in editing, you fit them in where they fit best.
Yeah.
Okay.
Especially since like I'm hopping all over the place, and sometimes I do a chapter that's just like a standalone side quest or something, and they're like, and then how does that fit in? And then
it seems like there's a lot, especially when you're writing time travel stuff. That makes sense that you would have a different editing process than you would if you were just telling one story.
Yeah, I have no idea what it's going to be like, which is pretty cool. That's where I like try to write this particular story from. It's always been like I sit down and go like, well, what's going to happen this time?
Yeah.
And, you know, that's kind of how all of a sudden I was like bored with where I was on a certain chapter. And I was like, wait a minute, what if there are robot ninja monkeys?
Is that spoiler alert?
That was in the first book. So that is currently available on all the places that audiobooks
are sold.
No, audiobooks, ebooks. There's not the audiobook version, although I probably can.
I need to get around to doing that for you, man.
Well,
I definitely do.
Oh yeah, that's right. We are under contract for.
It's more of a barter sort of scenario.
More of a barter, yeah. I mean,
you appear on the show, and I eventually get to do your.
You eventually. That's right. So I will not contract an AI to do the audiobook.
Oh Lord, yeah.
You tell me you're done with the project.
Yes, exactly. Okay, so this week's word. Let's get into it. The word.
Domo arigato.
Domo arigato.
Domo arigato.
Mr. Roboto. Speaking of, did you watch the short film that they used to play at the beginning of the Kilroy Was Here tour?
I honestly don't remember if I've seen that or not, because I remember the song.
Yeah.
I remember my cousin had the album. So I remember looking at the album artwork for Kilroy Was Here.
At the time, did you think it was racist?
No. But at the time, Speedy Gonzalez was still on TV all the time. So yeah,
So I guess it's all relative. That's the thing with these robots. Apparently, you have a robot that follows you all around.
Yeah, the 11th studio album by the American rock band Styx.
That was a lot of albums beforehand, but I remember having a few of them. I was a fan of Styx.
Yeah, now that I'm looking at a picture of the cover art, like, you know, the album art, I'm like, wow, there's some serious stereotypical things going on in those masks.
Yeah.
Those roboto masks, yeah. Ooh, a future in which a fascist and theocratic government and the MMM, the majority for musical morality, have outlawed rock music.
Yes. And Kilroy was the former rock musician who was framed for murder and imprisoned by the MMM leader, Dr. Everett Righteous.
It's a concept album.
Yeah, it is a concept album. But also Dr. Everett Righteous. Dr. Righteous. You can see where this could have been a musical, right? I mean, there's got to be some sort of kernel in there that was, you want to tell this story in a musical, but I don't know. I mean, as far as the sales of the album, it sold a lot, I think. Because, I mean, it's one of my least favorite Styx albums.
So it must have sold a lot. Yeah. It charted in the U.S., the weekly charts, Billboard 200, peak position 3. Certified sales, it was certified platinum. Over 1 million units in the United States?
Yep.
Over 100,000 in Canada.
Of course. It's very weird that 100,000 is the mark for it being platinum in Canada, but whatever.
We did it.
We set the bar a little bit lower.
I'm sure that's based on population of the country.
You think?
I think. All right. I think maybe they don't have as many people living in Canada back in 1983. Yeah.
And I re-listened to the album as I was preparing for the show. And it's not bad. Maybe my musical tastes have changed a little. It's definitely heavily steeped in disco, which is not something that Styx really did too much of back in the day. But it definitely has a sound like it's a musical. It's not a normal sort of Styx album, even compared to something like Paradise Theater, where that kind of had some musical feelings to it, but it wasn't conceptually. Oh, apparently the guy who made Poltergeist 2 did the Kilroy Was Here short film, written and directed by Brian Gibson. He did the Josephine Baker story and Poltergeist 2. Okay. And according to Kilroy was here canon, robots have testicles. So you just knee them in the testicles, and then you can take their exoskeleton, put it all over yours, and escape a prison.
That's not, boy, that's a take on the robot stuff. Yeah.
Our word this week is robot.
Right. I picked it out because that's like part of my alter ego.
Well, yeah, that's one of the reasons I thought it would be a good word to talk about.
Did you pick it out? You told me we have to do robot. Then you incepted me into thinking I thought of it. But yeah, you told me we got to do robot.
Well, but it makes sense. I mean, it would make sense that you would, because we did mention it a little bit in Logic.
Yep.
About how you had a penchant for Leonard Nimoy's signature character.
Who wasn't a robot, but yeah, I could have.
He wasn't a robot, no.
He was logical. We could have talked about Data, but
before we get into what is a robot, what isn't a robot, let me do the definition of the word robot.
Okay.
According to Oxford. Yes, Oxford Languages. Robot, noun, a machine resembling a human being and able to replicate certain human movements and functions automatically. A machine capable of carrying out a complex series of actions automatically, especially one programmable by a computer. Also in the noun category, a person who behaves in a mechanical or unemotional manner.
Ooh, not cool, Oxford. No. Shots fired. No.
And then also in computing, another term for crawler.
Right. Okay. For like a program that sort of does its own.
Like back in the day when you had browsers.
There's certain things like you can program bots to do things. And
yeah, that's what they do for browsers, right?
Or auto-populate certain things in certain fields and apply for credit cards for all kinds of people or something. They're good for like stealing identities, I think, you know.
If you ever wanted to do that, folks, get yourself a crawler.
The bots that, Twitter accounts that are like, this is obviously not a person, it's a bot.
Right.
So basically it's somebody made a little program that just picks text from somewhere to just post it periodically. And it's like, well, it's not really a person, but like there was one Twitter I was following that was like random Nietzsche quotes.
Huh.
And why was I following that? Because, a guy had a cool mustache.
Who had a cool mustache? Friedrich
Nietzsche. Yeah, a freaking beautiful 19th century mustache. You could sweep up a barbershop floor with that mustache. But he wasn't a robot.
He was not a robot.
He didn't even know what a robot was because robots weren't invented until 1920.
And that's interesting that you mentioned that. Origin of the word is Czechoslovakian, Czech.
Czechoslovakian is not a language, it's just Czech.
Okay.
There were two different countries that were glommed together.
From the Czech language. Origin is Czech, arobata, forced labor.
Yeah.
And also from the author Carol Čapek, Rossum's Universal Robots, which came out in 1920. That is where the term comes from, a robot.
Yeah, he wrote this play about these synthetic workers that are first happy to do all the work and then they revolt.
Right.
So the idea of the robot rebellion goes all the way back to the beginning of the word.
I just think forced labor is an interesting root.
Or like, actually, I'd heard it before that it was from the Czech word for slave.
Oh, okay.
Forced labor, yeah.
Yeah, maybe Google's trying to be all PC.
Well,
as you would expect.
Robota means for of the kind that serfs had to perform on their master's lands, yeah. And is derived from R.O.B, meaning slave.
So it's
in that family.
Definitely. Okay. Over time, obviously, it's gone up. Do you have anything to add to the definition of the word robot?
I'm going to say I got a robot in my house, and it is not a humanoid form at all. Stupid vacuum cleaner. I mean, it's a vacuum. It's not stupid. We love Ricky Jr.
You named your vacuum cleaner?
We did. Our first vacuum cleaner was named Ricardo.
Okay.
because a small child came to our house, and at his house, their vacuum cleaner was named Ricardo, so we called ours Ricardo. So then we just called ours Ricardo, and then Ricardo got old and had to retire. We got Ricky Jr. now.
Okay.
So yeah, it's a robot vacuum, which is I try to respect Ricky Jr. I don't take advantage of Ricky Jr. I do not. I feel sad for Ricky Jr. when he gets caught up on the legs of the bar stools.
Because he seems very confused.
The robots high center on the things, and I don't even like those bar stools, but we've had them for 4 years. I mean, no, we had them for a long time. They're from the old place where the kitchen counter that they were at was at a higher level, so the current bar stools do not fit our current counter space where they're at.
So Ricky Jr.
And also Ricardo would just high center on those things, and they would fight with them, and then sometimes he just like gets stuck there and he's like, I'm done. I can't. And then so it's like, yeah, I can't blame you, dude. I don't like these bar stools either, but
so it just stops at the bar stool because it can't move anymore.
Well, sometimes it'll get caught on it. Sometimes you'll like hear it go brum brum brum, this clunk and clunk, and it's like, oh geez, he's on the things again. I'm not in charge of either the robot vacuum or choosing furniture for that part of the house. So
gotcha. So it's a little bit out of your hands. Yeah,
it's out of my hands. And really, the problem with the furniture is that it's a very low priority thing. We hardly use them. I only get annoyed with them when I try to sit in them or the robot vacuum gets caught on them. And I'm like, the robots are going to revolt if we keep making them do this. But Catherine doesn't see it that way. So
no, she doesn't understand.
She's more like, I'm waiting till I find the bar stools I like for the price I like.
Robots be damned.
She's very good at waiting until the right thing comes along at the right price, and then we have a good thing. But I feel sad for the robot because I'm partly robot.
Exactly.
I have robot empathy. There's this like stereotype that robots don't have emotions, and
which is why you said, for shame, Oxford.
Sorry, throwing shade at the robotic folks. Like, no, we have emotions. We just get confused about how to express them in a way that other people understand. And so it's like,
right.
But like, really, yeah, the robot thing. Can I go into the story of why I picked partly robot as like a alter ego?
Actually, yeah, go ahead.
Well, it was, 11 years ago when I decided to try out this social media thing called Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
And also I was, a couple of years into my autism diagnosis and thinking about autism and all the stereotypes. And one of the stereotypes is like, oh, the people with the Asperger's type of autism, they're just like robots. And I'm like, I'm only partly robot, excuse me. Like,
right.
Like I'm like, there's a thing about the robot archetype and that way of looking at things in a very like, sometimes in a more rigid or logical way that I tend to do sometimes, but I'm not emotionless.
Right.
I just, miss some social cues, and I'm more aware of it, and by having the awareness, I'm able to be like, oh, hey, did I upset you I missed a social cue there? It wasn't personal. It was just like, I had this other idea in my head, and
right.
It's like the more you know, the more you have language to actually use and solve problems, which that's what I'm getting at. But so that's why I'm like partly robot. Mm-hmm. Is yes, this is a part of who I am. I do have this affinity for robots. I always liked R2D2. Wanted to be R2D2 when I was a small child.
Oh, okay.
Coming from like the small child perspective, R2D2 is the character you identify with most in Star Wars if you're 4 years old the first time you see it, because he's your height and people don't understand him, and it's like, yeah. You're right, R2.
That's one of the things of A New Hope that I never understood was all of a sudden Luke understands R2. He doesn't understand him. He's like, what is he saying? What is he saying? And then later on in the movie, he goes, oh, R2, do you think blah, blah, blah? And he goes, yeah, I think that too. Why? How? I think I missed it when I was younger, but I was so enamored by the whole production that I didn't focus on picking it apart.
And that's one thing about R2D2 is he really like, challenges the robotic stereotype of the strictly logical and unemotional, because
he's very emotional.
He'll be like, wait a minute, there is a problem here and I can fix it. And then C-3PO's like, oh no, that's not our place. You're going to get in trouble. And he's like, dude, please. Then he fixed the hyperdrive, And it's like,
exactly.
So 3PO's, why are you talking to strange computers? Like, so you find out stuff, dude. There's always been a thread of robots are pretty cool for me. But then they started making movies with scary robots, and I got confused. But
what sort of movies are you thinking of? It's not Chappie.
Chappie. I didn't see Chappie, but no, what sort of movie? Well, okay, like the original Battlestar Galactica, the Cylons.
Oh,
pretty scary.
Yeah.
Yeah, back when the Cylons actually looked like robots. I don't know about this new Battlestar Galactica.
Westworld was also a cautionary tale about robots. But then in our time, they started releasing cutesy robot movies like Short Circuit.
Short Circuit. Yeah, Short Circuit was...
starring everyone's favorite Gutenberg.
And also Fisher Stevens as in Brownface as an Indian guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. It's like, oh, 1980s. It goes right there with the Kilroy album cover. Like, yeah, you just,
The thing is, you got to kind of point it out, but at the same time, you also have to forget it's a product of the time. We didn't realize exactly how toxic that was, but
then everything's toxic. But, what we can all get behind is number Johnny 5 saying, no, disassemble.
What I always liked about Johnny 5 was when he was eating more input. And then he'd throw a book. He was eating information.
But the weird thing about that movie, I think, is that like the other robots, that the ones that didn't get struck by lightning, were like default evil. They were like military machines of death. Like,
robots aren't inherently bad. They do what they're programmed to do. If they're programmed to emulate human behavior, I think there's a distinction to be made between a robot, it's a body, it's a mechanical thing, but then the program part of it, I mean, it's still a robot, but you can have it with a program that's not AI or an AI.
Well, that's a deep question, because I don't know if we've actually figured out what AI is yet.
Yeah.
We have all these tools that we say are AI, and like, oh, look, this is this new AI thing.
It's becoming one of those those popular terms, those that don't really mean anything.
Yeah, as far as like the artificial intelligence, it's a programming that can make decisions. So there's a wide range of what artificial intelligence is. And so like the more autonomous you want to try to make your thing, then it has to have more latitude to make decisions. So it has to have a certain kind of intelligence to be able to make decisions.
Right. So
I think it's possible, like certain robots, like your auto line assembly robot that just does one repeated motion over and over again, that might not have an AI component to it. Whereas like the vacuum cleaner robot that sort of learns your house.
I never thought of that, but yeah, now that you mention it.
It's like, so there's like these levels of intelligence. And now we're starting to, get a lot of conversation about the AI programs that are running off of large language models, which I find it's kind of weird, like from this perspective of like, I'm going to this land of like Cartesian philosophy where I'm like, okay, the whole Rene Descartes' first philosophy where, he starts off with the cogito, the I think therefore I am.
Mm-hmm.
And like sort of builds up, well, I think therefore I am. And then there's this, and so he builds up this whole philosophical logical chain to prove his own existence and therefore why God exists. You go in there and that's what he's talking about. And but also like there's this Cartesian doubt is like, is this really what's going on, or am I just an awareness and an evil demon is inputting information to me?
Mm-hmm.
So when we're talking about like these large language model, like the Chat GPT and the stuff that's like taking a lot of input from a lot of, written language and then responding to a prompt and generating a lot of written language, how intelligent is this, and is it living the tortured life of an entity in that Cartesian doubt situation where like humans are the evil demons, like limiting what the input is on this thing, and like, hey, we're going to put this in and you barf out something, and like, is there really an intelligence in there that is incapable of really connecting what the information means in the world? You know, these instances of like the chat things kind of creating artificial facts, like they call it hallucinations. What is that an indication of? Like there's something going on where like that's generating something that wasn't there before, but what does that mean? And obviously it doesn't have a complete understanding of what the information coming in is, because it can't really distinguish between what's fiction, what's real. So I'm like, oh, I wasn't even prepared to talk about AI, but I'm like, yeah, it's like, what is it?
Right.
So I think we're just at a point where like it hasn't quite figured it out, but it's like, and I kind of think of like in terms of like human development. I have the opportunity to observe human development in my house because of the little baby girl.
Right.
So like, you know, they start out with this brain that is taking in everything and has to learn everything and process everything.
Big sponge.
But how they learn is by interacting with the world, seeing what inputs give them the right response. You know, what do they do, and you know, all of that. And so like, and that's how human brains learn, and how human consciousness learn, by interacting with the world with your body.
But that doesn't happen with computer programming, right?
With the computer programming, it's like, how is it interacting with the world? Like, if all of our AIs are these disembodied consciousnesses, something weird's going to happen where they just don't quite figure out how to integrate with the world. Maybe we need to give them robot bodies so they can integrate with the world and become better citizens of... Or are we afraid of doing that because they're inherently demented because we've been just piping them information without a context?
Right.
Are they going to go full Matrix on us and turn people into batteries?
I was thinking about more Skynet, but yeah.
Skynet, yeah.
More Terminator-like. What is the process by which the program grows?
Mm-hmm.
If you're feeding someone information, that's not learning. You're just getting more information.
Right. It's, yeah.
Which you can look up. How I base my decisions. That's, you know, making a decision. Maybe this is a good place to talk about the laws of robotics. Do you think so, or?
Totally. Let's jump over there because, yeah, Mr. Isaac Asimov's 3 Laws of Robotics.
Right. It's an oversimplification.
It's interesting. I have a take on it, but we could maybe
Okay.
We can refresh the audience on what the 3 laws are.
I think we definitely should, because
Nora, are you ready to be refreshed on what the 3 laws of robotics are?
She has never been a sci-fi person. However, her late husband was really into science fiction, so she connected with him more with science fiction television shows and movies. Gained an appreciation. I don't know how much science fiction she actually enjoyed reading. So this is probably something we definitely should cover. The 3 laws of robotics, according to Mr. Asimov.
Mr. Asimov, who came up with these things. So number 1, a robot may not injure a human being or through inaction allow a human being to come to harm.
Mm-hmm.
Number 2, a robot must obey orders given it by human beings, except where such orders would conflict with the first law. And 3, a robot must protect its own existence as long as such protection does not conflict with the first or second law. These are not like laws of nature. These are basic programming requirements that all the robots in Isaac Asimov's universe need to baked into them.
It's like a whole bunch of if-then statements.
Yeah, exactly. These are basically logical premises. If you read Asimov's I, Robot, his early robot stories, a lot of the stories are basically logic exercises in which to explore how to violate the laws of robotics. It's like, oh, here's a robot that doing something, following his program, and oops, we need to stop it, but how do we stop it? And then we're going to throw a human being in the way because it can't harm the human being. But then, through the book, the logical problems become more and more complex.
Mm-hmm.
Until finally it gets to a point where, in order to protect their own existence, they've taken to disguising themselves as humans and living in hiding.
Right.
Because humans start to see robots as a threat. I don't know.
There is a game. It actually has a connection to a city we're going to be discussing later.
Old Detroit?
Not old Detroit, just Detroit. Detroit Become Human.
Detroit Become Human.
Yeah. The company that made it was Quantic Dream. It was a single player sort of story driven adventure game where you make choices about how one of three characters is going to behave. Set in 2038, there are three robots or androids. There's one which is a caretaker. There is a companion robot and then a police officer. It kind of follows their stories as they discover their humanness, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
It's got all sorts of different, really interesting questions about robots and learning. It's a story-based game. You go down a tree. It's sort of a choose-your-own adventure, like on steroids, essentially. But I mean, it's interesting because there's something in the programming that causes these robots to realize that they're beings. Also, a really weird thing, I think Elizabeth Warren in that universe is president because it's President Warren. But anyway, that has nothing to do with this. Talking about robots and how they behave and what they do, they're doing menial sort of tasks a lot of times. The whole question that you raised about how do you discover the universe or your humanity, and that is through interaction. And that's the only way to do it. So how can you, if there's no way for it to see, if there's no way for it to feel, seeing things, I guess, is a start.
And it's a big question because it's new. And like, who's to say that? I'm not really sure, because the way that humans sort of set the constraints on how these programs and computer, the AIs take in information, it's, I'm not sure. You can give it access to video or audio.
Mm-hmm.
How do you tell it the live video is different than recorded video?
How do you teach it nuance, right, as far as observational nuances? How is that programmed? And it's not as simple as the laws of robotics.
Not as simple, yeah. Asimov really made it super simple. And it's like, well, these make good the 1950s era sci-fi things, but
well before there were humanoid-looking robots.
Asimov's robots, they do become indistinguishable from humans.
Right.
In his story, like, that is part of the arc of robots. And so, yeah, in the Asimov universe, the robots become a threat, and the humans have to exterminate the robots. There's at some point the robots and Foundation, like, they're connected. Like, he wrote stories that the Foundation stories are after robots. And if you watch the Foundation series on the Apple Plus, which is not really, it's based on the Asimov stuff, but
right,
there is like a character in it that is a robot, but she is the only robot that's left after the big robot purge that happened earlier.
That was written before Foundation wasn't it like his first big series, right?
Maybe. Well, the thing about the Foundation stuff is like the first Foundation stories were not novels. They were like, the first book is like a collection of short stories that he'd published places. R.O.B is a collection of short stories that he published places, and he was probably writing robot stories and Foundation stories, at the same time. He's wrote a lot of stuff. So,
right.
And then he wrote a couple like detective novels that were robot themed. Caves of Steel. It was like a human detective and his robot partner finding out stuff, and like, but basically the Foundation stories are like about, the aggregate effects of what human beings do and how it shapes history. And like, sometimes there's a tipping point where something can go one way or another way, and it's kind of neat.
The first time I'd heard about the series and in doing a little bit of research on it, the whole premise was this predictive sort of, I guess, algorithm or a way to predict sociological phenomenon through mathematics, and they were able
psychohistory.
And they were able to figure out that
it was the Galactic Empire would fall. Yeah, they'd be plunged into barbarism.
For, what was it, 30,000 years or something?
Or I don't know. I think it was like 10,000 years, and then Harry Seldon is like, hey, if you follow my plan, we can cut that down to 1,000. His main pitch was like, we can't prevent this from happening, but we can set things up so that the recovery's faster.
This is sort of my question that involves a computer intelligence, is how do you do that without a robot or without a computer? How do you figure that out?
Oh, well, they had computers. It was just exactly. Like, Asimov, what are you doing? He's making stories. So,
right.
Let's not confuse Isaac Asimov with Arthur C. Clarke. So,
let's not do that. Right.
Let's not do that. Asimov was like, I've got these ideas that are set in space, and we're going to do some things. Because, like, the Asimov Foundation series is basically inspired by the rise and fall of the Roman Empire.
Mm-hmm.
So he's basically, he's taken like, we have this example of an empire that fell and these things happen. And like, what if it's a space empire and there's a guy that sees the patterns and tells the emperor like, hey, this is what's going to happen. And the emperor says, screw you.
Also, one-time Hugo winner of the best all-time series, Foundation is.
Wait, yeah. The Hugos and the Nebulas. Those are nerd awards that are awarded to nerds by nerds. So
2 nerds, 4 nerds, by nerds.
I forget which one, like the Nebula or the Hugo. One of them is decided by fans and the other one's decided by peers. And they're like associated with different science fiction conventions. So, it's like any of those award shows. It's all about
who you know and politics, and
it's all about kissing the butts of people that sold a lot of stuff so that you can maybe get their blurb on your book. It's all marketing, dude. I don't know. It's not all marketing. It's conventions are fun parties.
I should make my butt kissing robot. That's what it does.
Your butt kissing robot. Yes, this robot kisses butt for me. Like,
so I don't have to. My social media robot, which they already have, I guess. How effective it is, I don't know. But
the first 3 Foundation books were not written as novels.
Right. They were all written as short stories and then collected into,
short stories or novellas. And then so there was like some argument over like the Foundation trilogy as being a true trilogy when like Lord of the Rings was actually a trilogy because he wrote all that at the same time. And it was his publisher that said, hey, this is too fat of a book to publish under one cover. Let's break it up into 3.
Right. But I mean, it was best series. It wasn't best.
Oh, yeah. That's because he ended up going back decades later and writing more.
He did. It's an interesting premise, just that whole kind of predictive algorithm sort of thing.
Yeah. But it's also like, yeah, you can do that. You can look at history and be like, oh no, something's going to happen. 2007, that's about right. I was like doing a long-term sub job as a middle school social studies teacher, and they were looking at the Great Depression in the textbook and looking at the causes of the stock market crash, which was all about, people were doing a lot of buying stocks on margin, which is like borrowing money to buy stocks to speculate that, it'll go up in value and I can sell it and then pay back my loan. And then I was like looking at the similar things were happening in real estate, the big short stuff that was going on then and I was like, what's going on right now is similar to what happened then. And then, a few months later, holy crap, we're going to have a great recession. And I'm like, wow. You can look at history and see the train wreck coming.
Yeah. We're getting off the subject of robots, though.
Let's talk about Robbie the robot, everybody's favorite.
Is that everyone's favorite? You said it was R2-D2 was your favorite robot.
Yes, R2-D2 is my favorite robot. He's way cooler than BB-8.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
Not bad. I also like Marvin, the paranoid android from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
So that's also sort of an artificial intelligence, right? I mean, that's what we're talking about with these robots that have emotions or feelings or...
There's a lot of kinds of robots, yes.
Marvin was depressed.
His terrible pain down all the diodes on his left side, yeah.
Yeah, he was
depressed.
Perpetually depressed.
Here I am, brain the size of a planet, 37 times older than the universe, and what am I doing? Parking cars. It's just like,
yep.
he had a level of self-awareness that was personally difficult for him. Right,
almost too much.
I really liked him. And especially like when you find yourself like, oh, as a person with an amount of intelligence that can see the stupidity of the things I'm being asked to do, I have to do them anyway. Oh my God.
Kind of hits close to home, right?
It does, yeah. So,
are there any other robots that you think of besides R.O.B? You know what? There was a time when, who was the robot in Lost in Space?
It was Robot. That was the name, I think. Robot.
Yeah, when people used to confuse the two.
Oh, Robot and R.O.B the robot? Yeah.
Yeah. People always, that always bugged me.
And they're like, no, they're different robots. And they...
Completely different.
And R.O.B the robot showed up on Lost in Space once, right?
Yes, I believe he did.
Yeah, he did. And the Love Boat.
And the Love Boat. Who doesn't want R.O.B the robot on the Love Boat? Did he find love? I don't know.
I think he did. Everybody finds love. Yeah, I think Isaac straightened him out. I don't know. The robot goes to the bar.
Certainly wasn't Gopher.
Gopher, yeah. God love him. Bless his heart. Gopher. He was a member of Congress. Or the actor was.
Right.
After being on Love Boat, yeah.
Fred Grandy.
R.O.B the robot. Okay, yeah, he made his debut in Forbidden Planet.
Right.
Which was a sci-fi take on the Shakespeare play The Tempest.
Mm-hmm.
So, and R.O.B played like the R.O.B, he's an actor. Yeah, R.O.B the robot was the Caliban figure, the downtrodden slave of Prospero. It was like, just basically has no choice in what he does in the world. And yeah, I mean, at least in The Tempest, Caliban is not a very happy camper. Whereas R.O.B the robot's like, fine, I will do the thing you ask, and doesn't have a lot of agency on his own. But definitely acting in that slave role. Forbidden Planet, yeah, the Ariel is more of the creatures from the id. So the Prospero's servants are a little bit different in Forbidden Planet. The play, the Ariel is, he's like the house slave, but he has magical powers. He's a spirit, and he can go around and do stuff. And he has higher status within Prospero's household, although he's still like a servant. But the Calibans of the world are like, yeah. So there's actually some like post-colonial theory based on The Tempest, and how Caliban represents one class of slaves and Ariel represents another class of slaves. So R.O.B the robot is the class of slave that pooped on the most. So.
What are some other notable?
Metropolis. Futura was, basically the created humanoid robot that sort of points out that between the head and the hands, there needs to be a mediator, the heart.
Right.
And that one, the robot wasn't really a slave. It was like sort of a creation to... I don't know. I haven't watched it in a while. All I remember is that like the working classes, they had to live underground, and then the rich people were way up on top. And the one guy's like, "This is not cool. I'm going to build a thing to save everyone." And Futura straightened them out. Said, "You know what? You people in upper management got to stop being heartless jerks."
Yeah. Just stop being heartless jerks.
You 1%ers really need to get your crap together. Gonna talk about Robot and Frank.
Did you watch Robot and Frank?
I watched Robot and Frank. Yeah, it's a 2012 movie, it's this bittersweet tale of an aging, retired burglar.
Right. Who convinces a robot to burgle with him?
Yeah, well, no, yeah, because he's like living in his home, like he did a lot of time in prison, and what they really got him for was tax evasion, just like Al Capone. So, he's living in his house, and it starts out with, his son comes and he's like, "Oh, Dad, you're living, it's a mess. Would you forget to do this?" And like that. And it's obvious that the guy has memory problems, and the son is like tired of, driving hours up every weekend, and is like, "Hey, we got you something to help you out." And it's he goes out to the trunk and gets out this robot. And so it's like basically it's a robot designed to help him with the memory issues and also help him get through life. So the robot is...
It's a caretaker robot.
A caretaker robot, yeah. And one of the things that the robot wants to do is to get Frank doing something intellectually stimulating to help with his memory issues. You know, keep it so he's like, we should, plant a garden or something. What Frank decides is intellectually stimulating is planning a heist.
Right.
So, and then convinces the robot that, that would be a good thing for his brain to do. So he kind of, one thing leads to another. That's where it gets super bittersweet. Basically, the robot looking out for Frank, the robot's like begging him. He's like, you gotta, delete my memory so they don't have the evidence.
Right.
There is some very clever stuff that they pull off in their little heist scenario. It's quite a caper. It's right like a low-key small town Westchester, New York caper, but they pull off a big one, and it's kind of beautiful that he's able to pull it off, and it's kind of sad how the resolution has to be.
Right.
But in the end, there's a gotcha, and then
okay,
you might cry for the robot a little bit. He's a good robot.
More or less than the robot in Iron Giant.
Oh, Iron Giant. Yeah, he was a good robot too.
Yeah, he was a good robot.
A robot that was slightly corrupted within the parameters of its programming. If you can convince me that you can get away with it, okay, I'll play along. And then I'm like, yeah, it's just interesting. Yeah, and there's some interesting conversation about what their consciousnesses mean and what they're based on and all that.
This kind of leads into RoboCop.
RoboCop, I watched that too.
He's more of a cyborg. He's not a robot.
He's more of a cyborg, but yeah.
But people refer to him as a robot because he's got mechanical parts.
He's mostly robot, yeah.
Right. I mean, how do you...
Partly human, yeah.
The interesting thing about the movie, I thought, was he's still got human things. He has a program, but he also has the ability to survive a directive that was going to shut him down.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Directive 4, right, yeah.
The game RoboCop Rogue City, been playing a lot of it.
It's a brand new game, right? Yeah.
It just came out. It was one of these games that I think what happened was it had a small development team, more of fans of the series, and they came up with this really well done RoboCop game, basically going the way the movie was, because all the environments are very similar to all the scenes in the original movie.
Yeah.
And someone threw a lot of money at it and said, hey, let's make this even better. And boy, is it a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you saw that video that I posted to Instagram where he's shooting a body.
Yeah, I was like, whoa, what's this?
An endless...
Just shooting it.
Yep, endless supply of blood. People's heads get shot off and stuff. It is bloody, but I mean, that's the magic. One of the things in the game, sort of similar to the movie, is investigating this how much human and how much robot he actually is.
Yeah, right.
Throughout the game, he starts having these, there's an actual level that you go through where you're remembering and you're having a conversation with yourself. You go into this sort of haze where you're talking to yourself. You're talking to Murphy in this hallucination kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And he wants his badge back, which Lewis gave to you as a reminder that you're still Murphy. But man, it was pretty powerful. And then you keep on hearing voices of his child and his wife. There's even a sequence where you punch those robots that are telling you about the house. They're not really robots. They're just kind of
they're like the real estate robots.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, like they're kind of like the robot servers in the restaurant. I don't know if you've been to a restaurant that has a robot server. It was basically like a human person would take a human person. That's because would take the order. But then later, like there was like a little robot that had a couple trays on it, and it would just basically, once the food was ready, they'd put the food on the robot's trays, and then say, "Go to table 5," and it would just come up, and then just like, and it was, it was a very low rent robot, yeah. It was very much like the real estate robots in RoboCop. It's like, well, you don't really do much, but you're here. Yeah. We don't have to tip you out. Okay. Yeah.
Well, back to the game. It's a ridiculous sort of first-person shooter, and they have little weird story beats and side quests. Like one of the first side quests I had in the game was I had to help someone in the police department with the line of people that were lining up for their complaints and whatnot. So he's like, oh, thanks for helping me out, Murphy. And then you act like a robot. The endings, from what I hear, for the different characters depend on what your responses to them are. You meet these characters, their endings kind of depend on how you interact with them, which is kind of a neat idea. But it's supposed to lead into RoboCop 3 from RoboCop 1 and 2.
I want to just say Peter Weller did a heck of a job.
Oh, yeah.
Because I recently watched it to refresh, and I was looking at Peter Weller, like before he became, got all RoboCop. I was like, wow, he's like a skinny dude. And then I realized that, oh yeah, that means that he can fit into this robot costume and get his body to do all these moves. Like the way he used his body to be like, that is a robot. The way like he'd turn his head and just sort of keep tracking things with his head while his body rotated around. I was like, man, Peter Weller, you must have gone to mime school or something. You're really nailing it.
I think he actually did hire a movement coach for that.
Because like I was just looking at like he went into it. He was committed, and I'm like, that's brilliant.
He did perfect. The vocal intonations, everything. And that's the great thing about this game is they actually got him for the voice. So everyone else, you'll see the same characters that you see in the movie, but they're not voiced by the original actors, like the old man. That's the other thing about RoboCop. It's like they call the head of OCP the old man, and he's still known as that.
Yeah.
I've already gone through some levels. There's humor in it. I can't say enough good things about it. It's not without its problems, as you saw with the blood and the hand sticking in through the desk kind of thing. There is a little bit of texture popping. Do you understand when I say texture popping, what that means?
I think I know what it means, like the texture of a surface, all of a sudden it's not consistent or something.
Yeah.
There's like a visual like...
Or it's loading in and it's just kind of flickers kind of thing.
Yeah. That's what I thought you were talking about. Yeah.
Okay. There are some instances of that, and I'm only halfway through it. I've gotten to a point where it's reached a conclusion that would be satisfactory, but apparently I've got another 11 hours or so to play it. So I'm about halfway through it, according to the percentage meter on the PlayStation 5. That's an interesting new feature, or at least new to me, is it tells you how far through the game you are, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. It gives you a percentage. So it's like, as long as you hit your B plus, you pretty much played the game.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun. They put a lot of effort into it. The company itself has like 12 employees, developed by Teyon and published by Nacon. Teyon, apparently, I believe they are located in Poland. Yep. They are a Polish game developer, producer, and publisher in Krakow, Poland. Wonderful job of just nailing the whole feeling. Some of the acting's not good, but I mean, it wasn't really supposed to be a AAA title. It was supposed to be something that was not really independent, kind of that AA as opposed to AAA kind of feeling, or at least that's the way it looks. You know, you've got your scanning vision thing where you get the outline, the green outlines. You can unlock a certain thing where you can ricochet bullets off of panels.
Yeah, nice.
I've already hit a sequence with a malfunctioning Ed 209.
Oh, Ed 209.
Primary weakness, stairs.
Stairs, yeah. It's like,
but unfortunately, when I was squaring off against him, there were no stairs for me to lead him down.
Yeah,
so.
I liked how like the Dick learned about where to place his AD 209 after that. Like, the stairs were a problem, and then later it's like, we're putting him down by the front door. Yeah.
Do that.
After all the cops go on strike, we're going to put the robot defending our place. Yeah.
Also, when he goes into Dick's office, He's going to arrest him. Next door, there's an Ed 209 that he just has there. We're just waiting. Why? I don't know. But it's movie logic. It's fun. It's a fun movie, RoboCop. Now that I think about it, the guy who gets all mutated.
Oh, yeah.
Emil, his brother is the initial big bad that you're fighting against.
Guy who was smoking while he's filling up his motorcycle with gas.
That's the lesson you learn from that movie is if you do that, you end up in toxic waste and melting.
If you smoke at the gas station, you end up in toxic waste. It's
the way it works.
It's the way it works, yeah.
The acting may not be 100%. I let that slide for the game. But, my gosh, the acting in the movie, who's the actor that plays the evil guy? That 70s show.
Exactly. Red. Who plays Red?
Kurtwood Smith. That's who it is. Clarence Bodiger.
Yeah, no, he did. Yeah, he did a good job.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, yeah.
I think all the actors, Nancy Lewis, Nancy Allen.
Yeah, and Ray Wise was in there,
yeah.
Hey, that's Laura Palmer's dad. What the? What's he doing hanging out with these thugs?
Ronnie Cox says Dick Jones. Bob Morton was played by Miguel Ferrer. Well-acted movie. Good thing Paul Verhoeven did it. I mean, I guess.
Yeah, it's Paul Verhoeven. He's got an interesting,
worldview.
Worldview. Yeah, he's literally as a small child. He lived in somewhere in the Netherlands that was right next to where the Germans were launching V2 rockets.
Mm-hmm.
So his neighborhood got bombed as a kid, and his parents almost died in an Allied air raid because they were trying to knock out the V2 missiles or rockets, right? Whatever they called them. They're missiles, rockets. As a small child, he was eyewitness to some of the worst stuff of World War II, and he was this is my life. Isn't it exciting? so there's this thing is he's I'm not afraid to show gore because this is. As a small child, this was my life. I'm whoa. So an interesting dude.
Oh, definitely. If you are a fan of RoboCop, you will love RoboCop Rogue City. As you progress, each sequence is sort of a closed environment, but you can go in and get little side quests within this closed environment. You have one main quest to complete the chapter, but you have all these other side quests. One of which you look around, you scan, you see cars parked illegally, and you give them tickets. You actually do noise complaints and...
The real low-level cop stuff, yeah.
Exactly. There's one where you go into the basement and find a lady's cat. Really common stuff. You find what they call... It pops up on the screen in your little HUD. Every time you find it, it says crime evidence. That's what
crime evidence.
Yeah. The various kinds of crime evidence. Compromising photos, you can find those, incriminating documents, purses, fake IDs, watches, jewelry, pick up all this crime evidence. Oh, and of course, Nuke, which wasn't in the first movie.
No, that was the RoboCop 2. Yeah, Nuke.
There's something coming with the RoboCop 2 shell later on in the game, which I've seen little bits of, and I'm kind of curious to see what that is. So, wonderful game. Check it out if you're so inclined. Unless you want to add anything on the robot trip.
Oh, man, the robot trip. I would say, all things said and done.
Yeah.
I feel like people are too afraid of robots.
Yeah, I think they misunderstand. It's not the robot, it's the programming, right?
It's the programming, or are people as afraid of robots as they used to be? Probably not. We probably think they're cool.
I think your cutesy robots had something to do with that.
The cutesy Wally melted everybody's heart and said, yeah, robots are good.
I was thinking of 2XL.
2XL?
Yeah. You remember 2XL?
2XL. No.
He looked like a robot, but he was a 8-track player.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I don't know about Conky from the PB.
Oh, yeah. There's Conky. Yeah. There's R.O.B, the Nintendo game robot that could...
that could what?
There was a game, Gyromite. It had little lenses for its eyes where it could detect various flashing patterns, sort of like the way light guns work. and then he would move based on whatever flashing signals he got from the television. You'd have to have him looking at the television, though.
Mm-hmm.
He could spin stuff. Spin gyroscopes. That's what he's good at. But anyway, give robots a chance. That's an excellent...
Give robots... All we're saying is give robots a chance. Some of them are... Yeah, cops, but that's okay.
Some of them are.
Some of them are like military grade... Yeah, I don't know. I think
death machines.
I think RoboCop actually said some stuff about trends in American police forces that, we're not too far from the mark. Like,
oh yeah,
somebody could go on. Somebody probably has already gone on and on about it. But yeah, I'm like, okay. I just wanted to watch it as a movie though. So
although not really a robotic parts, but there is programming.
Ed 209 is definitely a robot. So
definitely a robot.
You can like. Whereas, like, RoboCop has the human emotions, right?
Exactly.
And Ed 209 is just a defective murder machine.
Yes. You have 10 seconds to comply.
Everybody's like, get away from us.
And then after he gets all shot up, someone says, can someone call a paramedic? And it's like...
Yeah, like...
I think the word you're looking for is coroner.
So... Does that go down as an industrial accident? How are they going to report that on the insurance? I don't know.
I think they're just going to keep it quiet.
Yeah.
So on that note, Andrew, thank you for joining us. Really appreciate you being on the show. Thank you, audience, for joining us on this week's episode of the Too Vague Podcast. My name is Ben.
My name's Andrew.
And we've been your hosts. Have a wonderful night.
See you, robots.
Come quietly or there will be trouble.